Hello, everyone. I'm Adrienne Grimes with the South Carolina Research Authority. Welcome to today's webinar. This presentation is being recorded, and the recording will be sent to all registrants later today. If you have a question, please raise your hand icon on the bottom of your screen, and we will give you the opportunity to speak or type your question in the Q&A chat. We're excited to have Dr. Lori Hillstock with us today. She has over 20 years of experience in learning and development, primarily in online learning. She is an accomplished, innovative leader with a background in higher education, healthcare, and nonprofits. Dr. Hillstock has expertise in leadership development, strategic planning, building virtual communities, e-learning, and administering various digital learning environments. While flexible and interculturally competent, she has an innate commitment to quality online experiences. Dr. Hillstock holds a PhD in education leadership in higher education and a master's in human resource development from Clemson University. She also holds a bachelor's degree in English from Converse College. She is currently the owner and chief executive officer of Hillstock and Associates, a private consulting firm based in the upstate of South Carolina, providing leadership development and e-learning services to businesses, institutions, and organizations throughout the US. Dr. Hillstock, welcome and thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. And thank you to all of you for joining me today. This is going to be one of these different kind of sessions. And what do I mean by different kind of sessions? I mean that in this session, I'm not going to be a talking head. You're going to engage with me throughout the entire next 45 minutes. So put your shoes on and get ready to run and rock and roll, folks, because this is not just me talking to you, it's us sharing together. So if you're ready to go, guess what? I can see the chat. So if you're raring and set to go, enter your note there in the chat that says, yes, Lori, I'm ready to go. Say, let's rock and roll. Let me know that in the chat so we can really get started today. Awesome. Awesome. Thank you all so much. All right. I love it. I love it. Thank you for that. So here's the deal. I know Adrienne went over a few housekeeping notes with you, which is absolutely wonderful. But I also want to encourage you throughout this day to talk to me in the chat and engage in that Q&A. I just want to reiterate those pieces because it's going to be that important to keep us all engaged and keep us moving along. So today we're really just going to dive straight into some tools, tips, and tricks to be successful in this big virtual space. And I want to thank you in advance because several of you sent in some questions that it's my every intent in this next few minutes to answer your questions that you sent in. So we're going to go ahead and jump in and get started. One of the first questions that I was asked was, do you create an agenda? In fact, the specific question was, do you support hosts preparing an agenda prior to the start of a meeting? The answer to that question, from my opinion, is yes, 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 yes. You absolutely want to have an agenda. So here's our agenda for the day. All right, so we've already gone over housekeeping matters. And today we're going to talk about 4 key areas to consider when it comes to that virtual space. And then we're going to wrap some things up. Now, I want to make a second note about this agenda situation. Not only would I suggest that you create an agenda, but if you're telling people that they're going to be engaged with you for 30 minutes or 45 minutes or 60 minutes, go ahead and, if possible, put a rough estimate on the amount of time for each item on the agenda. That keeps everybody honest and focused on staying on task. But here's the downside. Big support tip here. If you say 5 minutes, don't go 8. Because you're taking away from something else. So if you're going to go to the point of putting time limits on your agenda, make sure you stick to the script, so to speak. All right, so with that being said, we're going to keep moving along. One very, very important thing to do today is, no matter what, I want you to relax and have some fun today, right? We usually learn when we're having a lot of fun. So we're going to play with technology. We're going to answer a lot of questions. I'm going to share with you. I'm also going to learn from you. And people always say to me, Lori, what are you talking about? You've been doing this 20 years. And it's because I've been doing it 20 years. I can tell you, There's always something new to learn. So don't be afraid. Put your information in the chat in the QA. We're watching that. I won't call your name if you don't want me to, but I will ask your question or I will share your comments. So let's just rock and roll. All right. So with that being said, a lot of people come to us and our team, and they look like this. They're like, oh my goodness gracious, what do I do? I am so over being stressed out about this virtual space. It's just too much for me to think about. People's technology isn't working. Their sound is not right. People never start on time. They never finish on time. I hear phones going off, all kind of crazy background noise. What do I do about that stuff? How can I have a better quality online experience, right? Not only for my events, but for events that I'm a part of. And how can I make sure that I'm picking the right kind of technology? Because as a small business, I'm just like you. People look at technology and they're like, oh, I tried this and it didn't work. And I tried this and it didn't work. And I tried that. And I got all this money tied up in technology. And guess what? The technology's working me instead of me working the technology. So we're going to talk about all that stuff today as it feeds into you making better strategic decisions about what you need today in your current state and future state. And in the technology space, I'll give you a hint, big tip, big piece for success. Many times people like to think about things in that 3-year, 5-year, 7-year time span. But in this distance learning arena, that's too much pressure because things change so often. So I encourage people to think 12, 24 months, 12, 24 months, right? If you look at things in that 12, 24 month time span, you're usually going to be right where you need to be and typically make longer term better decisions that way as well. So one of the other hot questions I was asked was about all these virtual activities. There's so many platforms that are out there. Can you break apart some of those pieces for us? And can you talk about some things that happen that we should think about before and during and after a session? So my response is, yes, we can talk about those things today. So let's just get started with it. We're going to look at some common platforms that are out there, some considerations of what you need to think about to be successful before your actual event, during your event, and after your event, and some ways to avoid total disruption, right? Anybody ever heard of Zoom bombing? Yeah. So before we get into all of that, I want to take a quick little poll, right? So what you're going to see here on your screen is a little poll. And it's going to display for you some common platforms that are out there. I just want you to go through and check all of the ones that you have used before, right? Just take a few seconds to check them. The poll will last for about, I don't know, about 20, 30 seconds, and then we're going to take it back down. So I want you to kind of take a moment and kind of go through and check the ones that you have used before. All right, and then we'll take a look at some of the results. All right. Yay. And let's take a look at the results. Look at this. The vast majority of people have used Teams or Zoom, and quite a few with WebEx. I think WebEx and Zoom are about tied. Some people have used BlueJeans. Nobody on this call has used Adobe Connect. All right, thank you for that. So we're going to talk about those wonderful pieces. So let's go ahead and jump in. When we think about these common platforms, here are the things that these platforms have in common, okay? They all have a free version. They all have a free version. And here's the deal. Before COVID, the free versions were different. Some of them offered a whole lot more in terms of the free version. Zoom used to offer all kinds of stuff for free. When COVID hit and everybody started using it, they locked down on some of that free stuff. And then Teams and some of these other things didn't even exist before COVID, but all of them have free versions. And here's the thing you got to keep in mind, because so many people are in this digital or virtual learning space, the free version rules change, right? So if you're interested in Teams, go look at what they're doing today, because it likely was different 6 months ago. If you're interested in Zoom, do the same. All right. And so a lot of them will say that their standard free version is maybe 30 minutes for, a group conversation and for 3 or more people. But they've added an asterisk, and Teams has done a really good job of that. They've really expanded that during COVID, they've given 24 hours for over 100 people. I think they even increased it to like 300 people, just to help businesses balance a bit more. All of them have built-in security features. So that means you can lock down people. If they come in and they're not playing nice on camera, you can lock it down. You can keep them on mute when it comes to their mics, all the rustling of paper. You ever heard anybody rustling paper when you're trying to do a session? It's really distracting, right? So you can keep people limited on certain things they can do. And if they're not playing nice and they're being very disruptive, all of them have the built-in feature to where you can literally click and kick them out of the space. You can also lock the room. So if you have the set of people that you're expecting to be in that space, you can lock it so where nobody else can get in. They all have private and group chat. So just like now, you can all chat with me, you can chat with each other, you can chat individually or as a group. They all have the ability to share audio and video, just like we're sharing here today. And they all have the ability to share screens, just like I'm sharing here today. So those are some common things. But another key question that I was asked, and I'm going to read the question to make sure I get it correctly. Can you discuss the pros and cons of Microsoft Teams versus Zoom webinar versus Zoom meeting? And believe it or not, more recently, Zoom released Zoom events. So yes, let's talk about that. These are some of the differences, right? If you are, and I'm just going to highlight some of these key pieces. If you are, if cost is a significant issue, Microsoft Teams is cheaper than Zoom. That is true. Go do the assessment. It is cheaper. And Microsoft Teams integrates very smoothly with your use of Microsoft Office. But if you're not an Office user and you don't care about that kind of stuff, then Zoom, a lot of people like it. In terms of capacity, I'm going to say this to you. They have, both of them have capacity, but what you will find and what we have found over our years of doing this, especially the past couple of years with more and more people doing virtual activities, what we have found is that the vast majority of people are more comfortable in Zoom than they are in Teams. And the Zoom capacity is greater than it is in Teams. So usually if it's for a meeting, small to mid-sized meeting, Teams is totally fine. If it's for a large conference, you know, a few hundred up to 900,000 people or so, Zoom usually handles that much smoothly, and their encryption is stronger than Microsoft's encryption from a security perspective. We've also found that the video quality is much better on Zoom. So those are some key pieces that you might want to think about in terms of the differences between them. And if you want more information about that, you're welcome to just send me an email and I'll be happy to share with you. Or if you want to talk more about your particular event, you can always go out to the hillstockassociates.com website and book a free consultation, and we get 30 minutes and we'll talk all about what you need to do, and it's free. So those are some key points you want to consider about the differences between Team and Zoom. Now, that being said, let's look at your actual activity. What do you think about before, during, and after the session? So here's the thing. What we don't want to do is just show up and start talking. That's not fun, right? Because all kind of stuff can happen to you. So what I'm going to do is lay out some key things to think about in each of those categories. If that's okay with you, let me have a yes there from you in the chat. I'm going to hold about 30 seconds just to make sure we're all okay, in a good space. I'm watching the chat and I just want to make sure we're good. So if you'll just type yes for me in the chat, we can keep moving along. Awesome. Thank you guys so much. That's great. All right. So that being said, here's some key things to think about when you are planning a session. I'm going to go ahead and tell you, it is a production. If it's an event, if it's a conference, if it's something that's going to involve a decent number of people, think about it like a production. So some questions you want to think about is, what's the purpose of your session? Is it just going to be you and one other person? And is it just a conversation? Well, that's fine. You don't need a whole production team to do that. You just jump in and have a conversation, but know what you plan to get out of the meeting and know what you plan to share in the meeting. And if the meeting's going to be 15 to 20 minutes, don't take somebody 30 to 35. And why is that? Because it's disrespectful. Unless you have their permission to keep going, you have to end it. So think succinctly about what you need to share, what you need to get, and stay focused in that space. That's true if it's one-on-one, if it's a small group, or if it's a large group. If you guys think about it like this, you have planned to be here from 11 to 12 today. You would not appreciate the fact if I kept talking and it was already 2:30. You got other stuff to do. You're interested in this stuff, but you got other stuff to do. Right? You're running a business. So you got to think about that and think about other people's time. All right. So when and for how long will the session take place? Who are you talking with? Now, this is important. Are you talking with people who already know, have a base level of information, or are you sharing something new? Or is it a combination of people all over the place? Because you may have to level set. If everybody comes in with very similar knowledge, then that's stuff you don't have to cover in your time period, and you can just hit the highlights and move ahead. But if people aren't quite on the same page, then you have to take a little time to break down those pieces a little bit more before you move ahead. So thinking about that, okay? How will people access the session? A lot of people will step back and say, Lori, that is a crazy question. Really? How many people put their information out in tools like Eventbrite and other tools and never put the URL for access in the system? People have added this to their calendar, but they don't have the URL to get into the system. Then 5 minutes before, people are in panic mode thinking, how do I get in? How do I get in? How do I get in? And you're stuck in support instead of being focused and starting your session on time. So it's always good to send a reminder note, but it's always good as well when people register, go ahead and give them the URL so that when it gets added to their calendar, it's sitting in that calendar space for them. A lot of people fail to do that, and it causes a little bit of panic and anxiety for folks. And here's one, I'll tell you. I'm so glad Amy's on the call today. I know Amy, she is an awesome presenter. If y'all ever get a chance to meet Amy Johnson, you definitely want to talk to her. But Amy reminds me of this. There's something called co-facilitators. Sometimes you are sharing an opportunity, you're paired up and there's more than one of you presenting in the session at the same time. You should have a great rapport with your co-facilitator. Personality should match in some way. Otherwise, one person saying, well, okay, I think I'm done now. Hey, Sam, do you want to go? Yeah, I think I'll go now. Well, okay, that's boring. That's not energy, and it takes away from the session, right? So it should be nice handoffs to each other throughout that session. And will you share your screen, right? Will you actually share your screen? If you're going to share your screen, and I'm going to show you this today, if you're going to share your screen, you want to share it in a way, you want to practice that, plan that, because sharing your screen is not quite as simple as some people think it is, right? And finally, how will you interact with people? I've asked you guys so far to interact with me through a poll, through the chat, and I'm going to be doing some other interactive pieces today. So you want to keep your audience engaged by getting them to talk to you, raise their hand, share, thumbs up if I'm going too fast, going at the right speed, thumbs down. If you've got issues or questions or things like that, you want to get people to engage with you. So let me pause for a second, see if anybody has any questions. If we're good to go, give me a note there in the chat area so I'll know to keep moving. I'm going to hold for a second until I hear from folks in the chat. Awesome. Thank you. I love it. I love it. All right. So with that being said, here's something else we want to think about. Okay. Your physical space. I'm going to take a risk here. I'm going to show you guys my physical space. All right. Right now it's all blurred out so you can't see it. But sometimes we make mistakes. All of us do. And when we make a mistake, we show our actual space to people, and it's on camera. And when it's on camera, if we got all kind of stuff stacked up around us, then people are spending more time being concerned about what's around you than they are about what you're actually sharing. So I'm actually going to cut my virtual background. I'm going to show you my actual physical space, right? Can you guys should be able to look around and see, this is my home office. This is my actual physical space. It's fairly cleaned up and neat today, right? But can you imagine if I had all kind of junk stacked up behind me and all kind of stuff all around me? You guys would be paying a whole lot more attention to what was going on around me than what I was actually sharing with you. So how do I know that? Because it happens all the time. It happens all the time. People's cats and dogs and things come into play, and it gets kind of crazy, right? So here's a great example. This is someone who had literally prepared her entire set, and everything she was going to share, she was really passionate about what she was going to talk about. She got all dressed up, got her hair done, her face, everything's great, and she's presenting from her closet. How many of you right now in this moment, be honest, are trying to pay attention to what's in her background and what's happening there in the closet than you are in listening to what I'm saying right now? Right. It's a distraction. So what we want to try to do is set up our Zoom backgrounds, right? And when we set up our Zoom backgrounds, it does make it a lot easier and better for people to be able to uh, focus on what we want them to focus on. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take a link for those of you who have not done this before, and I'm going to go ahead and put in the chat area a link for information for how you can go in, change your virtual background in Zoom. And not only that, it also includes some stock virtual backgrounds that you can use that Zoom has put out there that are fair and safe for you to use. Because I'm going to share this with you. Just because it's a picture online does not mean you have the right to use it. There's copyright rules, but Zoom has already taken away a lot of those issues for you. That's the link to Zoom. There's not many out there for WebEx. There's some built in for Teams, so you can check those pieces out. Other things to consider is test your equipment. So I want you guys to go along with me on this thing right now. You can see me and you can hear me pretty good, right? But what if I did not test my right? It's unplugged. Can you guys hear me right now? Is anybody wondering what I'm saying? Right, you can't hear anything hardly that I'm saying to you. Some of y'all are sitting there like, what did I just miss? Some of y'all are literally wondering what you just missed. All right. So a lot of times I've seen people put their earbuds in or put on a headset and they don't have it connected to their computer. And the sound sounds funny, right? And so when they make the mistake, and it doesn't sound quite the same when it's not hooked in versus when it is hooked in. All right, so now you can hear me better. So you always want to check that sound. You're absolutely right. It is not the same. So check that sound out, because sometimes we think we're using a headset or earbuds or whatever, but it's picking up the computer mic, and it's typically not as strong and good as when we use headsets or earbuds. A lot of folks talk about lighting. I'll share with you that I have an extra light with me today. I think you guys can see that here in my camera. This is one that I got literally from Lowe's. It was like 13 bucks or something. And if I have the lighting on and shine correctly, I look pretty decent on camera. But if I turn it off and I don't have natural light, then it looks different. So I use it a lot, especially when there is a bad storm outside, or it's extra dark in the house. That lighting gives me better look on camera. So think about that. One of the things we've already talked about is the virtual background. And another key question: do you suggest using a headset or a green screen in the virtual space? Yes and yes. You just heard the difference between me using a headset and not. And I actually do have a green screen here in my office space. And what I will share with you is, when it comes to an actual green screen, if you have really good natural light, Teams, WebEx, Zoom, GoToMeeting, all of them, even Google Meet, have now started to put out software that corrects for the green screen. So if you have really great natural light, you don't need it. I typically only use my green screen when it's really bad outside and it's dark. I used to use it literally every day. Now I might use it, well, when the weather changes. So, if it's bad and raining, maybe once a week, maybe twice a week, depending on the season, but that's it. So whether you want to spend the money on a green screen is up to you. I have a big curtain. Some people literally get the ones that go over your chair. They're usually about 40 bucks from Amazon. So that answers that question. All right, so other quick tips. This is all before you even get started. You want to set up your virtual space. Here are some tips with that. And what I'm going to do is bring up a screen to show you how this actually looks, right? So let me bring this up for everybody. All right, so some things to think about in your virtual space. When you're setting up a meeting and you go in to schedule your meeting, a couple of quick points to keep in mind is, let me bring that back up for you. There we go. You give it a name and all that goodness, and you give it a date and time and your duration. Here, where it talks about setting a passcode, you really don't need it. And I'm showing Zoom, but it's the same thing in WebEx. The screen just looks slightly different, but a lot of the features I'm talking about exist in Teams and WebEx and other tools. You really don't need it because you've got a wait room. And so people can't get into the wait room, right? Get into the actual session until you admit them from the waiting room. So because of the new security features, you could use either or, but passcodes are kind of just there. A lot of people don't use them, they use the wait room. Here's another quick tip. Here in this area where we talk about video versus audio, we never allow people to drop into a session with their video automatically on. Never. We have them come into the session and they have to physically turn it on. Why is that important? Because sometimes when you're trying to connect to the session, it might take a minute. So you might get up, go get some coffee, get something to drink, take a bio break, pet your dog, do something with your cat. And all of a sudden you're in the session and everybody can see everything that's going on. And candidly, these days, sometimes we don't need for people to see us below the waist. And I'll show you some of that in a bit. So what do we do about that? We have people come in with their video off and their audio, their video, everybody comes in with their video off, and then they have to turn it on. We also have people come in, mute people upon entry. So they have to unmute themselves if they want to talk. So they are controlling when they come on mic and when they're not. We never let people join at any time. If a facilitator is responsible for that session, and if there's a producer in place, they will admit people in the space. So we don't want people there before the host is ready. And we typically automatically record things, and then we just edit out the beginning part that doesn't, when people are just coming in and just sort of chatting before the session starts. That way you never forget to record. And you can always edit, you can download these and you can always edit these recordings later. A lot of folks ask us, what do you use for editing recordings? We use the cheap stuff. I mean, there's lots of expensive stuff out there. Screencast-O-Matic used to be cheap and free. It was free. Now it's like $30 for 3 years. Okay, well, that's pretty cheap compared to a lot of other video editing software, and it does a really good job. So I'm just sharing with you some things that you can actually think about doing. So let me pause there and see if there's any questions about the items I've shared with you here. Just one moment. Don't see anything in the chat or in the Q&A. So we will keep rocking and rolling. All right. So, and the last preset is consider preparing a script. Like, candidly, I'm not using a script today. I'm just sharing you with stuff that I love to do and that people always ask us about, right? But I sort of cheat because I kind of have a script because the slides are guiding me as to what topic I need to share with you about. Now, the upside to having a script is that you've thought through the things you're going to say, which keep you on task with what you're sharing. The downside to having a script is if you're not comfortable with what you're sharing, you're going to be sitting there literally reading like this from a piece of paper, and you're going to forget to bring the energy to the set, and then people are going to wonder what the heck is going on, right? So you want to engage with people. So the script is not a crutch, it's just to keep you on task. Okay. So that being said, that's all the things you want to think about even before you get to the session. And you obviously want to practice it, right? We've talked about the audio, but one more thing I want to show you with the video, and it speaks to screen sharing, right? So I'm going to show you guys this really quickly. At this point, I'm going to play a video for you. But before I do that, I want to just mention to you these key pieces here. You're going to see me turn my head for one moment so I can highlight them a little bit more. These pieces right down here, okay? It says literally share your computer sound and optimize for full screen video clip. When you get ready to share a video, you always want to have those items checked, okay? You don't want to have them checked unless you're sharing a video, but you do want to have them checked if you are. And let me show you the difference, okay? Just going to show you the difference really quickly. Can anybody hear what she was saying? Anybody? Enter your notes there in the chat for me. Nope, couldn't hear a daggum thing. Why? Because those items were not checked. Now, I'm literally going to go back into that. And I'm going to share my screen with those items checked and show you the difference.
Hi, everyone. It's Farah from Zoom. We've had a lot of requests lately to have a quick 101 starter guide on how to get.
Did everybody hear that time? Right, because you have those particular items checked. All right, so let me just, I'm going to literally take an extra second and go back and show you. It is share your computer sound and optimize for video. But here's the thing, I have them checked, but here's the other mistake. When you're not showing video and you have it still checked for optimize for video, does the screen look gritty to some of you right now? The text on this screen should look gritty. And it does because Zoom is still trying to optimize for video. And it's assuming that all this great text over here is actually video, and it's not. So when you're not sharing video, you need to make sure it's unchecked so that it comes back nice and clean. You should now see a difference, right? So that's something that catches people quite often. All right, so we'll keep moving. So all of that taken care of prior to a session, and I'm literally sharing with you, I'm exactly where I want to be in terms of time, because it literally takes that much effort to properly prepare for a session, right? Then once you're in the session, it's time to have fun. It's time to enjoy it. Key tips. People always ask, should I log in? Quick question that came in, should I log in early before a virtual meeting starts? The answer to that question is yes, you should log in early, right? Typically 15 to 20 minutes early, just to check the sound, just to check the video, make sure everything's good, and because squirrely things can happen. And during the session, you always want to maintain eye contact. If I'm presenting and sharing with you and I'm just sitting back, laid back and saying, hey, are you having a good day? Oh yeah, I think everything's good. And I'm all in, Justine, I'm talking, I'm having a great time. But I'm never looking at you. And the difference is now I'm engaged with you and I'm looking and I'm talking with you. Do you feel the difference in that type of session? So you've all experienced it. I'm seeing your notes there in the chat. People have experienced all kind of interesting things. You don't want to be that example, right? You want to be the one where people say, man, Justine was so, or Justin was so engaged with me because she was looking at me and talking with me in that camera and not all the way around the room, right? Good points. Thank you. And here's something else. Lori, you've got dress appropriately on screen. Are you serious? Yeah, this really happened. Anybody ever watch Good Morning America? Yes, it happened. The newscaster was doing his best to share on Zoom his story, and nobody was paying attention to this guy's story. Okay, he didn't have his camera adjusted just right. So keep that in mind when you're on camera. All of you may be on camera, right? So adjust it. That's why you want to get in 15 to 20 minutes early to make sure you're adjusted just right. And I'll share with you, I cheat. I look down. If you look at my desk, I actually have part of from waist down is under the desk. And my whole team does the same thing. And we never stand up in a meeting. Never, ever stand up. Not to say we're dressed like this guy, but most of us, we're very comfortable in shorts and flip-flops. We get a lot more done that way. So just letting you know, you don't want to be this guy. How about that one? All right. Other things we've already talked about, raising your hands and that kind of stuff. And get this, when you've got so much going on and so much to share, you want to make sure you're high end energy and you bring some fun. And that takes me to yet another question that I was asked. I think this is one of the last ones. When it comes to virtual activities, do you have a suggestion for fun virtual activities and events for my employees to help build camaraderie while keeping them engaged? Yeah, of course I do. Yes, there's lots of things that you can do to keep people engaged. And what I'm going to do here, I've got a quick list. There's lots of virtual icebreakers. I'm going to start putting some information here for you in the chat. I'm just going to copy and paste them for everybody to get a hold of those particular links. I would suggest you take a look at those things. Lots of icebreakers you can do. We play Jeopardy with people. We do people bingo. I put even how you can build the bingo cards for free out there. So I get one factoid, something unique about each person sometimes. And I create a bingo sheet with their names on it. And my call sheet has the factoid on it. And everybody has to figure out who I'm talking about. Whoever gets bingo wins. That's a cool thing to do. Like I said, we play Jeopardy. Sometimes the Jeopardy subjects are about the content we're dealing with, or about the business we're working with, or about the if it's sales training or employee training, it's about the training that they just completed. It's a game, right? We also think about things like other things that you can do, for example, virtual escape rooms. There's lots of free ones that are out there. I'd suggest you go to that link. We use them all the time. They're free. They're usually, they set a timer and you put them in the Teams and let them go to work. And what's more fun than all of that, y'all are going to love this. It's a virtual dance party. What in the world is a virtual dance party? Well, I got to tell you, we have lots of fun with virtual dance parties. We really do. In fact, let's have one now. Y'all want to have some fun? Let's have a little fun. Here we go. I'm going to give you 50 seconds just to dance it out. Here we go.
It might seem crazy what I'm about to say. Sunshine, she's here. You can take a break. I'm a hot air balloon that could go to space. With the air, like I don't care, baby, by the way. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like a room without a roof. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like happiness is the truth. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you know what happiness is to you. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like that's what you want to do.
I know some of y'all are thinking that I have completely and totally lost my mind. I have not. That's a part of this type of thing. If you're going to talk with people, if you're literally going to talk with people for 45 minutes, you got to keep it interesting, right? So those are some things that you can try. And they don't all work for every type of event. If it's a high-end thing and people are all business suited up, then you got to keep some of these virtual icebreakers down to a minimum. But just think about some things that you can try based off of the audiences that you have. All right. So with that being said, quick meeting tips: get people to give you those thumbs up, thumbs down, hand claps when you do something good, or go faster or go slower. Other things you can think about there. I also use webcam covers. Now, a lot of you saw me do this. I literally just switched it off and switched it back on. I use a webcam cover, our whole team does, because sometimes when you're trying to physically stop and start your camera using the tools, it's slow. But we use covers that literally just cover up our camera. It's a physical cover. They're pretty cheap. And if you don't have any, I'm happy to send you some. This is what they look like. You just slide them and unslide them across on your camera thing. Mine's tacked to all of ours. I'm happy to send you some. Just send me an email. I'll put my email address there for you in the chat. And when you send me an email, you got to tell me where to mail the webcam covers. Be happy to send them out to you. Mine says Hillstock and Associates, but we use them all the time. So if I have to step away for a second, I just close up, right? If it's something I need to check for a second, I just close up, and when I'm ready, I come back, and I don't have to wait for the systems to catch up with me. So just a couple other things to think about. All right. And after the session's over, after the session is totally over and you are ready to end everything, some things to think about. What about the recording, Lori? I'm going to tell you, if you record the session, you want to release that recording within 48 hours of the event. And if it's like a week-long event, you get like 72 hours. After that, people are disengaged, right? So go ahead and release the recording. Even if you have to edit it, go ahead and get it edited and then send it out. And all of these, like Teams, Microsoft, Zoom, WebEx, all of them have survey tools built in. So here's an example of what they look like in Zoom. You don't have to have SurveyMonkey. You don't have to have Poll Anywhere. You don't have to have all those tools. They're already built into the system. And these are just example screens of what they look like in Zoom. And what I'm going to do for you here in the chat area is I'm going to go ahead and post for you where you can get the post-event survey information for Teams, WebEx, and Zoom. So that's the support for how you can get those particulars of the tool that you may be using. Those are the most common tools. So I pull those resources to help you out a bit. Okay. So I've had a lot to say, hadn't I? Let me say this to you before we get to the next piece, because I still have a few moments and I want to go over a few other highlights with you. If you need any support or help with your virtual activity, we do all this stuff and we like to play around with it. You can get your consultation for free. That's our job. What we do is we literally help people transition to this virtual space, this distance learning arena, in a quality and sustainable way, right? You want to put out something that's solid, that's clean, that people really appreciate. If you want a free consultation, we'll do it in 30 minutes. We can cover a lot in 30 minutes, right? Go out to our website, hillstockassociates.com, and book a free consultation. Everything's in categories. So if you want to do a virtual event consultation, you can do that. If you want to do a technology consultation, you can do that. If you want to do leadership stuff consultation, you can do that. They're all 30 minutes. We'll answer your questions and then we kind of move on from there and you can decide what you want to do. Our job is to help you. That's what we want to be able to do with you. So before we move on, let me pause. I've answered all of the questions that I believe came in early. Thanks, Amy. I'll always take the positive notes there. If there's anything else, any other questions you want to talk about with virtual activities, go ahead and enter them there. I'm watching the chat. I'm also watching the Q&A, and I've got about 7.5 minutes left. So there's a couple other pieces I want to share. In doing that, I'll watch the chat to see if any other questions come over, and I'm just going to go ahead and jump into a couple other pieces that came over earlier. One of them is, what about how do I transition my content? All right. So I got all my virtual stuff worked out, but I got loads of content. I need to do training for new employees. I need to help my customers access this material. I sell training, right? Some of you actually, part of your business is to sell training, and you're able to do that effectively in person. But what does that look like online? And it may not be an event. It may be what we call an asynchronous sessions or asynchronous learning. And so people may take now, instead of, a half a day or a whole day to absorb the content in person, they may take a week to 2 weeks online. How do I do that? And that whole piece speaks to that learning experience design, where we look specifically at your learners, who they are, and what knowledge, skills, and abilities do they already bring to the table? And what is it that you want them to learn while they're engaged with you? And then we also look at their experience. So we look at the knowledge they bring, the content you want to deliver, and the systems that you're using, the way in which you're choosing to deliver it online. So it's a combination of, and I'll bounce back a screen, of their user experience and the design, how that content is designed. And all of that speaks to the learning experience design. And you're going to get copies of these questions. All of these questions are in the PowerPoint to think about that. Because here's the thing. Let me pause and go back and ask you to go back to the chat with me one more time. How many of you are willing to wait when you go to a website? You're willing to wait, 30 minutes for a website to load. Give me a yes or no in the chat area. You visited the website, you're willing to wait 30 minutes, right? Lots of no's, right? All right, no way, not happening. What about 10 minutes? Anybody on 10 minutes? Yes or no? 10 minutes for it to load? Y'all are saying no way, huh? Okay, what about 5 minutes? Right, if we're not even willing to wait 5 minutes for a website to load, right? What usually happens, I'll tell you, the research shows 2 to 5 seconds. If a website hadn't loaded in 2 to 5 seconds, we're like, forget it, we move on. Well, that's what happens to your content. People aren't interested in this piece of having books and pages to read online when they need to just capture the pieces that they need to capture and then move on with the rest of their day. So if you're doing new training for a new team member, or if you're trying to sell training on a particular topic so that they can do their jobs better, maybe to the general population or something else, you want to keep that content in small, manageable chunks, right? And some of you've heard the term chunking. Some of you've heard the term micro learning. All of that's true, right? And that's what we want to think about when we're thinking about our content online. So if you have a desire or interest in dealing with transitioning your content online, here are some of the things you have to think about. User experience, the instructional design process, any type of policy or procedures that have to be thought about. We do all of these things and we can help you with that. You can book your free consultation. And I say that to people because a lot of times people get all their questions answered in 30 minutes and it's free. Why not use the resource? I encourage you to use that as a resource, right? So just a few things to think about. And then one of the last things I want to cover in my last 3 minutes here before I turn it over for global general questions is, anybody ever felt this way? Completely and totally overloaded with all the technology that's out there? Are you kidding me? What the heck is a learning management system? Why do I need a content management system? What is this and what is that? And why do I need all this stuff? Why do I have to be on social media? And do I do Twitter versus Instagram versus whatever else is Facebook and whatever else is out there? Too much stuff. Okay. If you're feeling that way, here are some things to think about. Even during a pandemic, how has your typical day changed? Think about that question. Write down the answer. What are your pain points? What do you really need to focus on? If you can just get these pieces more comfortably resolved, you can do better with your business. What things are just in your head for how to do them and not written down? So if you've got somebody else that you're trying to get in your business, as your businesses grow, you're trying to get someone else to learn a procedure or a process so that they can take over that part and you can focus on something else. If it's not written down and available for them, either on paper or electronically, then you're constantly working with them. It's hard to let it go. So you got to start documenting things. And again, do you really even need a learning management system? These are some things you might want to think about to help you reduce your technology load or overload. So we can help you with some of those based off your needs. I did not spend a significant amount of time going through these pieces because everybody's needs are different. So we can address your specific needs. If you want to go out and book that consultation, we will look at your need, how much time and money is needed to address your need, any customization, scalability, adaptability. We deal with all of that stuff to help you make things smoother. And I'll say this to you, it's a true statement. I said it at the beginning. If at the end of the day, when people engage with you, unless you are a technology company, if at the end of the day, you're feeling the conversation, the technology is working you and the conversation is all about the technology instead of the content, it's not good, right? You should be working the technology instead of the technology working you. So what we want to be able to do is help you streamline those pieces. You can get a lot of questions answered in that free consultation. So we'll invite you to do that. All right. So with that being said, just keep in mind, we do help people transition to this space in a quality way and to help you be sustainable. You just don't want to go full blast in a week and then be sort of a dud after that. How do you keep it up? How do you handle it, especially when you're growing? How do you manage the growth? How do you deal with those particular pieces? So if you have any other questions, I'll ask Adrienne to come back in now and help me address some of those questions that may be out there. And of course, you can always reach out to us there. This is how you can get us and also grab your free consultation. So I'll go back to the question slide and then we'll start taking questions. Okay, Adrienne?
Okay, I'm looking in the chat.
Anyone have any questions? Go ahead and enter them in the chat or the Q&A.
So can you talk a little bit, can you expound a little bit more on the fact that Teams is cheaper than Zoom, but Zoom allows more bandwidth in terms of your, did you mean specifically for the amount of people registering? Is that what you meant by Zoom allows more?
Yeah, Teams is much cheaper than Zoom. The Zoom pricing structure looks one way, right? But when you have to kind of add on pieces. And as you start to add on pieces that you need, the cost goes up, right? So basic Zoom is free, right? It's fine. But if you're going to be able to host unlimited meetings with unlimited number, well, up to a certain number of people in those meetings or webinars, well, actually just to do meeting for up to like 100 or so people, then you pay a monthly for that. And you pay a monthly, not just for your business, but for every named user in the system, right? So if you've got 10 employees who want to have an account on Zoom, then you pay that fee times 10 per month. So that's where the cost can start to add up for you. Then if you want to also do webinar is an add-on. So when you buy Zoom, you just get straight Zoom. And if you want to add on webinar, you pay a certain fee per month. And then if you want to host up to a certain number of people, a straight meeting in Zoom will allow you to host typically between 100 to maybe about 100 people in just a regular meeting in Zoom. Then if you want to keep it at meeting and have more like 200 or 300 people, you have to add on large group meeting, which is an additional fee. 250, add on another 250, add on another 250, or you can add on webinar, which goes up to 500. But if you're expecting 1,000, you got to add on more cost. Well, you don't have all those add-ons with Teams. You have some add-ons, but it's not as complicated of a structure as Zoom. Now, some people look at it and say that's too complicated. But what Zoom has done is say this: you can do an add-on just for the month and then take it back off. Okay. So the way we've sort of cheated it, and when I say this, lots of folks do it, and we actually had this conversation with Zoom. We have webinars, we do webinars certain times of the year. So we literally stack them all in for that month, and we just pay the fee for the month, and we run like 5 webinars. Then we don't pay the fee again for 6 more months. And so we're not getting charged monthly for that. So there's a way you can just get what you need for Zoom for the time period that you need and then release it. Teams will allow up to a certain number of people, but the connectivity is not as solid and smooth and strong. So when you start to hit, a few hundred up to like 1,000, we have, in our experiences, Teams hasn't been able to handle that as smoothly as Zoom.
Okay, thank you. Can you speak a little bit on the differences between Zoom meeting and Zoom webinar? How would someone know which one they need?
That's a great question. Here's the thing. If you want to be able to see everybody, if the speaker wants to be able to see everybody, you're going to drop over into meeting. Webinar is not going to let you see everybody on camera. Okay. It shuts them down on purpose, right? But Zoom has added so many features to the meeting platform that you can literally run a meeting like a webinar and not have to pay the webinar fee except for the number of people that may be in there. So for example, it used to be when people would log into Zoom meeting, you could not, there was a feature in there that even though you said they came in on mute, they could still unmute themselves. Well, now Zoom has this feature to where you can set it to where it says in meeting, people cannot unmute themselves. They have to wait for you. That feature's sitting there now. So that helps you a lot. Webinar by default allows up to 500 people. So you're usually good to go with webinar. And webinar gives you just a lot more lockdown control over your meeting and what you're pushing out than meeting does. So if you really have several hundred people in there, you're not going to have 100 people on mic at that time. It's too many anyway. So it's really a webinar or a seminar, right? And so you're probably going to run through webinar in that particular case. Now, Zoom has added a third feature. They have webinar, they have meeting, they also have Zoom events now. Okay. And so what a lot of people used to have to do is for the keynote speaker, they would make it a webinar. But for individual breakout sessions, they would make them meetings so people could engage with each other. And they'd have to give out all these different links. Well, Zoom has found a way to push it all together. And it's now like a conference setup. And you get the combination of meeting and webinar all in one nice little trail. It's really slick. It's really nice. And in fact, I'll go out now while we're waiting on the next question and see if I can put in the chat for everyone the information about Zoom Zoom events, because it's a really slick tool, and they just sort of slid it out there. They didn't do a big announcement like they would normally do. But now you really don't have to pay a third party to run those events for you, because it's really nice and slick. And here's some information about Zoom events.
Okay, nice,
Okay.
nice. So this one is interesting. We noticed you did not have Google Meet in the list of platforms to use. Does that mean it's a poor choice to use for professional purposes?
No, not at all. We use Google Meet often, and here's Google Meet. It's in our initial list.
Okay.
See if I can put it back up there for you. On our initial list of items, I'll reshare it. One moment.
Okay.
There we go. Google Meet is out there. The symbols change a lot. This is Google Meet now. This is the more recent symbol.
Okay.
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 And it's there. Google Meet, we use Google Meet for one-on-one meetings and for small group meetings, but it does not work well for conferences. It does not work well for major events, and not in our space. We have not had great success with it with events. It's free, so it works wonders for us. We're a virtual company. And the other thing it does work well with is Zoom has firewall issues in certain banking or financial institutions, and so does WebEx. But Google Meet and Teams has not had that experience. So when we're doing events and we know we're dealing with financial institutions or certain government institutions, they won't punch a hole in the firewall for Zoom or WebEx, but Teams and Meet usually run smoothly. It's just if you get so many people on there, it's not slick, it's not smooth. It doesn't look that good once you are trying to run through things like that, and the virtual backgrounds are not as fun. So it's just not as clean. So we usually, the ones that we see used often are Teams, WebEx, and Zooms. And for small to mid-size, pick one preference. For mid-size to large, honestly, I know a lot of people are all Zoomed out, but it is, in our experience, it's the slickest one out there.
Good to know. One more question about the Google Meet, even though it has its limitations. Does everyone that logged on to be able to access it, do they have to have a Gmail account, or can
They do not.
They
do not.
Okay.
And the great thing about it is that if you are a Google shop, we run a lot personally in our business off of Google. Google's free, right? So all of our files are shared in Google and things like that. We just lock down security. And then when we create a Google meeting, it automatically adds it to our Google calendars. And then when we send the invite to people, it automatically puts the Meet information in there. So there's no extra, do I need permission to do it? It's already set up. It just does it seamlessly. And they do not have to have a Gmail, Google account. It's just a link, just like it is in Zoom. And it also provides for them a phone in the event that they're not able to physically connect on their computer. So it does have some really nice features.
Okay. All right. And
it doesn't allow for private chat. So those of us who like to back channel can't do it in Google Meet.
Okay. Okay. This is great information. Well, I think that's it for the questions. This has been great information, Dr. Hillstock. And I needed that dance. So thank you for that. While I was dancing, I was wondering, how long is she going to let us dance? Because I really needed it. So I appreciate that. As a reminder, this presentation is being recorded, and the recording will be sent to all registrants tomorrow. And for our continuous improvement, please complete the survey after the webinar ends. Also, be on the lookout for upcoming SCRA webinars, which can be found on the SCRA website under our News and Events tab. Have a great rest of your day.